Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Becoming a Powerhouse Brand. I am very excited today because we have the lovely Athena Dobson on, who is the CEO of Girls in Property, and she's an absolute queen when it comes to starting and scaling your property business. And she has basically self-led, helping herself get into the property industry. So, Athena, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I really appreciate it.
Yay. Could you tell us about how you got started in property? Because the listeners that will be listening to this are at a point in their business and their life where they're scaling, they're looking for that next thing. And I know from conversations that I've had, they have considered property or perhaps have dabbled in it themselves. So it would be really interesting to hear how you personally got started getting into the world of property.
Yeah, definitely. So the first thing to say is I don't somebody introduced me on a podcast the other day and they said Athena Dobson property investor. And that actually isn't how I see myself. So just to be really clear, property can just be the most amazing vehicle and tool to actually get you to kind of what it is that you're actually looking for in life, time freedom, lifestyle, all of that. So that's the first thing to say. And the second thing to say is when you're a property investor, first and foremost, you are a business owner as well. I think a lot of people forget that you've actually got to be a business owner. So how I basically got into property and how I found property to be my vehicle of choice that then led into other multiple streams of income was that I actually used to be a travel consultant for 7 years. So I sold really luxurious holidays. One of the coolest things I've ever done was I got flown out first class to Mozambique to actually go and test drive some of the five-star hotels and get sent back again. That was crazy. So I had a really fantastic high flying corporate job within the retail travel world, as it were. And then unfortunately, March 2020, of course, COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I completely lost everything that I had. So for 7 years, everything I knew had just vanished. And I received a an email that evening when Boris was on our screen telling us to stay at home. I got an email to say the world is shut. We're no longer selling holidays. You're furloughed until further notice. And it was the most terrifying thing because I relied on one source of income, nothing else. And I didn't really know anything else. Travel was my life. So I did what most people did, which was for about 2 weeks, I felt really sorry for myself. I ate loads of chocolate and Ben and Jerry's and everything. And then one day I was literally doom scrolling through Facebook. And as I was doom scrolling, I don't know in terms of algorithm how it worked, but I was starting to get my eye on different ways that I could make a bit of extra money. And property came up, and it was a 2 day property course that you could do online for £99. And I thought to myself, well, why not? £99. What else am I going to do? I could do that, you know? So I went, I sat in my lounge, and for 2 days, I was a sponge learning all about property and how to get into property. And over these course of these 2 days, they were teaching us about a buy-to-lets. They was teaching us about how to set up a company, and they taught us about different strategies you could do to get into property. So me being me, as many will know, I get bored very easily, and I constantly like to take on new challenges and new things, which is where I am today. And so what I decided to do was I decided to buy a flat in Bournemouth because you needed a 25% deposit to get started with your first property. Because when it's your own property in residential, you only need a 10% deposit. When it's your second property, you need 25% deposit because it's an investment. So I did just that. I looked at my bank account. I saved up all of this commission. Yes, I probably should have used it at the time for me to survive through all of this, but I thought, no, I'm going to be a risk taker. I'm going to put it all into this buy to let. And my what I wanted to do was I wanted to set up a limited company, which I did the following day. Um, I literally did that, no hand holding, just went, yeah, I think this is right. Let's just click some buttons and let's be a director. So that happened the following day. My partner thought I was insane. And I said, right, I want to buy a flat and I want to convert it from a 1 bedroom to a 3 bedroom. And then I want to refinance it and pull my monies out, which is actually insane when you think about it, that I got all of that from a £99 2 day course. But um, with that, I listened to so many podcasts, I read so many books. I'm often reminded that there was so much more to it than just those 2 days. Like I became this obsessive person that just read all about property, all about that. And so I did just that. It took a while to happen because there were lots of caveats to it. Number one is trying to find the correct flat, the correct price that didn't have the restrictions in place, because there's lots of different caveats between leasehold and freehold, and trying to get that. So I'd say about 5 months later, I actually managed to find what I was looking for, a flat at the right price in the right area, what I wanted to do. And then I went through the process of purchasing, and then planning took about 9 months to go through. So this was not like an overnight quick thing. This was something that happened over a period of time. And within that time, I went back to work, but the job was never the same. The job had completely changed. The commissions had changed, the landscape had changed, all of the benefits that came with the job had changed. So I was sitting there going, no, there must be so much more to life than this. All the benefits of traveling have all gone. This is now just a really difficult working till 9 p.m. job with
Yeah.
customers shouting down the phone at you because their honeymoons have been cancelled. I was like, no,
Yeah.
I'm out of this. And so I went and I did that. I literally went and I bought my flat, and I changed it. I didn't actually manage to change it around because by the time the timing had actually come in, I'd started to learn and educate myself a bit more and realized that the deal wouldn't have actually have been a good deal if I had changed it to a 3 bed. So to this day, I still have that 1 bedroom property and I still keep it to this day. And we spoke about legacy on different podcasts, Jackie, and that's my legacy that I'll leave to my children one day, is that first
Yes.
flat that I ever
I
owned.
love that.
Yeah, it will be my baby. Like it's where I learned all my lessons. It's where I had all my heartache. Many things went wrong. If you ever want to know about things that go wrong, just come and DM me. Like loads of things went wrong, but also lots went right with it. But what then happened from there was I realized I didn't want to go back, but I'd run out of money, because when you put all your money, 25% deposit into this property, you're like, I don't have any money left. What am I going to do? So I learned a strategy that was called rent to rent, which I'll just do a really quick overview now to know how I got into where I am today. So it's like, for example, if you were going to give a landlord, let's say £2,000 a month, but rather than one family going and living in it like you usually would, you would actually become the tenant as a corporate person. So I would become the tenant, but I wouldn't live in it. I would basically be managing it out to 5 different rooms. So there'd be then 5 different people that would be in it. And it isn't subletting. And the reason it's not subletting and it's completely legal under something called corporate lets rent to rent is because the landlord is aware of it. It would only be subletting if the landlord wasn't aware. So everybody had the correct contracts, everybody was on the same page. So this is exactly what happened. I did this, and rather than controlling the asset and having to put 25% deposit in, which was a huge amount of money, I needed about 5 grand to basically get this one off the ground, with deposits, with everything there. And then that just sort of replicated and went again and again. I then moved into serviced accommodations, which is your Airbnbs and your booking.coms. So rather than someone paying me monthly, they're then paying me per night. And that was how the rent to rent structure of cash flow began, which meant that I was that person that was able to leave my full-time job and be able to replace my salary in under a year. And I left my job on September 16th, 2022, was when I became a full-time, if you like, business owner, property investor, doing all of this. And and although that was great and I was really enjoying it, I felt like I still hadn't quite found my soul's purpose, although I'd left my job. And yes, I still felt like I had a full-time job. I was still running around like a headless chicken. I was still out at 11:30 at night because somebody had actually locked themselves out of the house, and I had to go and sort them out. Like if anything, it was more hassle and more work than my 9 to 5, and I want to make that really clear. But what ended up happening was I started to network, and as I started to network, the very first networking event I ever went to had 45 people in a room. And of those 45 people that were in the room, only 3 were women. And
Wow.
I was thinking to myself, where are all the women? This can't be it. It can't be it. And so I decided that I said to myself, right, I want to go find these female networking events. I think that, I did try with my first networking event to try and get involved with the guys. They were quite huddled. There was a lot of drinking. There was a lot of banter. In my opinion, a lot of inappropriate kind of comments and things. This was about 3 years ago, so I appreciate times have now changed, but it just didn't feel right. My gut didn't feel right. So I never felt like I quite fit in. So I said to myself, right, I want to go find the female networking events. And I went looking. I found Female Invest, which were two lovely ladies in New Zealand. And they were putting out podcasts, they were putting out things, but that was all around investment. It wasn't around property.
Yeah,
And then I found another one, but they weren't really doing any networking events. It was almost just like a WhatsApp group that they had. And I was like, well, hold on, where are all the in-person networking events for women in property, finance, construction? Where are they? Um, and there wasn't one. There really wasn't one at the time, about 3 years ago. So I have that. I've heard it before, that saying, and I really take it with me going forward, which is if a door doesn't exist, go and bloody build one yourself. And so I did just that. Hence, Girls and Property was born. So
love
Girls and
that.
Property. And yeah, now it's standing really strong. So it started off as a podcast. So it literally started off as a podcast that I started with two other girls, actually. We literally just came on and chatted about our journeys, the mistakes that we made, the disasters that we were facing. And then over time, trying to coordinate three people, three women together is quite difficult. So then I actually took it over full time. So I am now CEO and host of Girls and Property. And that's where Girls and Property really took off. Like I had full reins. I started the Girls and Property community, which is an online community, but we also do in-person workshops. And I also put on specifically what I always wanted, which was in-person events for women in the property space. And I've got one coming up in April 2025. So I became what it is that I wanted to see in this industry, which I'm very proud of.
Yeah, I love that. I love your journey, and I love hearing how you literally started not knowing anything about the industry, but you just threw yourself all into it.
It's mad, really.
No, I love it, but that's so like ambitious and confident and driven to actually make that your reality and to learn. And I think that's something that holds a lot of people back in scaling their business. It's that fear of the unknown. And I think you almost just didn't let that fear hold you back. It was just, I'm going to do this thing. I've got got this vision.
Yeah, but you know what? It was absolutely terrifying. Like people always say this to me. They're like, Athena, I've got so much fear, I've got so much uncertainty, I've got so much anxiety. And I say to them, of course you do. Of course you do. Like you've never done anything like this before. How do you not have those feelings? In fact, if you don't have those feelings, you shouldn't be doing it or you're basically dead inside. You need to have that because that's what fuels you. There were so many times I thought I'd made the biggest mistake. There were so many times I wanted to give up. So many times like Jackie, like I have shed every tear you can possibly imagine, going, what am I doing? This is a horrendous idea of mine. But there was something in me that just said to me, there must be more to life than this. There must be something else. I know the life I want to give. And it's like you're born with it and it just sort of sits quietly inside you and then it
Yeah,
sort of bubbles to the surface. And don't get me wrong, people doubted me. I was the travel girl. That's who I was. I was Athena Travel. And funny enough, I looked through my Instagram the other day because I had to find some more photos for an article I was writing. You can actually see on my Instagram the transition happening from all the travel photos that I was doing into all the property photos. And I'm like, oh wow, you can actually see it.
yeah,
And one thing I want to say also is what's really important is when you're a business owner, because I'm having to learn this myself, you don't need to identify as one or the other. So for example, people sometimes say, well, you are Athena, property investor. You are Athena, girls and property. Okay, fine. That's one element of me. But actually, if you were to cut me in half, I'm just bursting with travel that's coming out. Travel is actually my soul. Like that, I love learning about culture. I love seeing new destinations. Like if someone was almost to sit at a table with me, or there were two tables and they said, right, Athena, you've got two tables. Are you sitting on the travel table or are you sitting on the property table? I'm going to the travel table,
really?
100%,
Wow.
100%, 100%, because I actually really am so interested in where people have been, where
Yeah,
people want to go, like, why would they go there? Where have their children been? Like, I love those conversations. Whereas, yes, property is wonderful, but for me, it's simply a vehicle. It's almost like a vehicle that gives you the income to expand, to
yeah,
build wealth, to build wealth. But actually, it's like, is that who you are? Like, is that who you are? It's bricks, literally. Or are you over here like in Athens or in Hawaii or in Canada. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, all day, every day. And that's why when you see me on my socials, I also write in my bio, Globetrotter,
Yeah,
because I try and go away as often as possible. And now I'm in a beautiful position where I can take my laptop and I built this life for myself where I'm no longer chained to this desk where I used to have this phone that I used to have to answer as soon as it rang, and my identity was, 3653, and I'd have to pick up, go, hello, 3653. I now just get to be who I know I'm meant to be and just get to manage all of the businesses and have my multiple streams of income, which I'd love to talk about because it's so important to have within
yeah.
business. But actually, you can be anywhere you want to be in the world, and I choose to travel. I love it.
I love that. And I think like I talk a lot about soul's purpose on here. And I think the fact that you have built a business and you've got those multiple income streams that allow you to travel more. I mean, you've just got back from, were you in Egypt recently?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I love that.
I was working in Egypt. Why not? I wanted some sunshine.
Amazing. Do you think you'll ever get into property overseas?
Oh, do you know what? Yes, yes, definitely. Yes. So I would love, when I think about my life, I actually would love it, if possible, where I live 6 months of the year in the UK and 6 months abroad. That's actually what I'd really love to do.
In different
That's potent.
places or in like the same?
It's a good question. At the moment, if you ask me, I'm probably either going to go to Greece for 6 months and buy a place in Greece, just because, of course, I'm half Greek, or Spain. Spain has my heart and always has had my heart. And getting a place in Spain, because I have a dual nationality passport, I actually can go and do those things because it's obviously European. So I would absolutely love to do that. However, having said that, I had this conversation with somebody the other day who owns a place out in Greece. And she actually said to me, she's like, Athena, if I could do my time again, I wouldn't own a property abroad. I would actually just go and rent somewhere because it's a less hassle. You get looked after, you get all of that. You don't have to deal with the winter months.
Yeah,
Um, she was like, if I could do it again, I would actually not buy. I would just go and live somewhere for the other part of it. So it's almost like leasing as opposed to owning, which can sometimes have its own benefits. But so yes, I probably would, but again, it's all about multiple streams. I spoke to somebody about this the other day actually on one of the podcasts, and she said to me that she had seven multiple streams of income, and I did mine, and I was like, do you know what? I've got about six, and that's what I learned the most. If I took anything away from my previous job, it was that I never want to be in a position again with anything where Boris is on my TV screen, first of all, and second of all, him telling me that my job was now no longer viable.
yeah,
And therefore, I had that absolute sinking, gut-wrenching feeling going, what am I about to do next? What does this mean for me? We'd never experienced it before. And I never want to feel like that again. I want to always have my multiple streams. And in property, for example, it's all about diversification. It's not about just doing buy-to-lets, just doing HMOs, just doing service accommodation. It's really about, right, what are my cash flowing strategies? What are my wealth building strategies? What are my legacy strategies? Like, what are they? And diversify at all times would be my advice.
yeah. How do you manage it all? Because at the moment, you've got a lot of things, and obviously having all those different income streams, and you've got the podcast, you're doing events, you've got a membership, you do mentoring as well. Like, how do you find the time? Like, how do you manage all of that stuff?
Do you know, it's a beautiful question. Somebody asked me this question the other day, and if I'm honest with you, different days have different answers. So they really do. So it's not easy. It's really not easy, and you can't always keep up. There's a lot to it. Um, I think I'm better than I used to be. So I've burnt out twice doing this basically. Really badly. I was very, very unwell because with me and my personality, and I'm sure so many people relate to this, and you as well, Jackie, is I just kept going.
Yeah,
You just literally keep going because you almost feel like if you stop, you're gonna fall. So you just go, well, I can't stop, I can't fail. And that's what constantly keeps you going. But actually, what I've had to learn is that isn't a healthy approach to have. At one point I was managing my buy-to-lets, I was managing my HMOs, I was managing my serviced accommodation, which, by the way, just for a reality of what that actually means when I'm speaking, so you understand my language, is, you're getting called out, let's say on a Sunday evening at 9:30 at night because somebody can't open the window because their partner's broken their arm and you need to go and help them. And you're just about to sit down and have your dinner and you can't eat your dinner because a guest is in your property that you've got to go then and fix. Like, and that's about half an hour away from you. You then get calls at 11 p.m. at night because somebody's locked themselves out of their HMO and you're managing the property. Therefore, you've got to go and help them because they can't get a locksmith out and you can't bear the thought of them being locked out of their own place. Like, this is the reality of what is. So, coming back around to your question, which is an excellent question and one that I'm almost trying to figure out, the answer is my diary is literally sacred to me. I live off of my diary. And so everything has its place. And what I like to do is I like to have very structured plans. So let me give you an example. Let's say that I've got a week. Now, for me, what I used to do is I used to have it where I used to do podcasting, then I used to do a bit of property work, then I used to do a bit of mentoring, then I used to do a bit of girls and property. And so you're constantly changing hats. Literally, each thing requires a different hat, which was exhausting for me. And the best advice I ever got given was they're like, Athena, you need to structure your week better. And what they said to me was, right, Mondays is just going to be podcasting and business development. Tuesdays and Thursdays are just going to be mentoring. You only mentor on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Wednesdays are going to be property. So all your property aspects will be on a Wednesday. And Friday will be for business development again. And then the weekend is for fun.
Yeah.
So I now don't work on weekends as much as I can. If I have to go to an event, that's absolutely fine. But for me, weekends are sacred because they have to be. Because one of the things that I learned actually when I first started was a lot of things were sacrificed. So, for example, my relationship was literally at the bottom of my priority list. And I actually got my partner Steve on the podcast, the Girls and Property podcast that I have, because I said it's important that we're really open and honest and we show the reality of what our life is. And it was almost like therapy for us, where we were literally like, he was like, well, you don't prioritize me. And I'm like, I don't. I absolutely don't. And I said to him, you're kind of halfway down my priority list and I'm actually underneath you. Like
Yeah.
I don't prioritize me, I don't prioritize my health. And that was a real awakening for me that I went, no, something's got to change. So weekends are sacred. I keep those for us. But I think structure is the best thing. And to put actually in your diary, which I have to do, otherwise I won't do it, is self-love. So, for an hour, I'm like, right, me time, me time, me time. And that's really difficult to do. I'm not saying that I have it cracked, and I'm not saying I have all the answers, but it's about knowing you and understanding you and realizing that you're never going to be able to run on empty. You're going to have to stop at some point. When is that? And also, actually, Jackie, I take a lot of holidays, so I guess that's how I manage it. I go to the sunshine.
Yeah, follow the sun. And I think that's really inspirational to hear as well, because where like everybody that's listening to this is in that scaling stage, it's very easy because as entrepreneurs, we are naturally hungry for that next thing. We're always not necessarily chasing, but we're always looking for, okay, what's next? What's next? What more can I do? And pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. But actually, it's always really good to check in with, okay, let's just look at my life for a second. Is this taking over my life? Am I neglecting certain areas that actually are important to me? And just coming back to who you are and realigning everything and just like seeing if that next move is right or if you can maybe put a pause on things. I think we get so focused on that next thing, and I'm like a fiery Aries. So if I get an idea, I'm like, right, get it out there. Let's go all in. Um, and I think it's like sometimes we do need to remind ourselves that actually, like, we can take our time, we can slow down a bit. We don't have to go at 100 mile an hour for every single thing in our lives.
Yeah, exactly that. And you said something fantastic there, which is if you're ever thinking about business or you're ever thinking about becoming a business owner, or if you're interested in property as well, always have your end goal in mind, always. So when people say, oh, Athena, like I'm interested in getting into property, but I don't know what strategy to choose. That's the number one question I get asked all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't choose the strategy chooses you. Because if you think about your end goal in mind, like where do you want to be? Are you a hands-off investor or are you a person that's looking to leave your full-time job and therefore needing to have a high-flying cash flowing strategy where it is literally full on, then you've got to think about, and if you think about where you are at the end, you'll then be able to work backwards into your strategy. So
Yeah,
for example, for all the people interested in property out there, I always talk about a 70-20-10 split. So if you think about it, think of like a pie. You've got 70% is cash flow, 20% is lump sums, and 10% is longevity. So if you think about it, 70% is going to be your cash flowing strategies. So deal sourcing, property management, rent to rent. These are all where you control the asset as opposed to owning the asset. Lump sums is going to be kind of your flip. So when you're flipping houses, you buy it, you renovate it, you sell, or you're going to do something called a buy, refurbish, rent, refinance. So you buy a property, you refurbish it, you rent it out, and then you refinance it onto a higher amount and can pull some of your monies out. And then you got your longevity, which is kind of like your buy to lets, your capital appreciation, the legacy that you want to leave behind. And that can include things like commercial conversions as well. A lot of people are getting into multi-use units now where they've got properties at the top and then they've got shops underneath. That's another way of doing it. So it's always about thinking to yourself, well, actually, I want to be like a hands-off investor. I don't want to get too much involved. It's like, great, probably buy to lets are going to be right for you. Whereas serviced accommodation, for example, people always say to me, yeah, but I've got a manager looking after it. I've got a manager looking after it. Believe me, nobody will manage that property for a client for the way that you will. And if you think about it, reviews are everything in your, booking.com, Airbnb. What's the first thing you're looking for when you go and want to stay in a place? It's the reviews.
Yeah.
If the manager doesn't care about that, they don't care on a Sunday night at 9:30 that they're about to sit down to their dinner and someone's called them to help them fix the window. I had to go and do that. So just be really realistic, I would say, in your approach to it. But there is a fantastic world out there in property, and it can be massive in terms of wealth generation.
Yeah.
If you think about it, people who invest in business, they invest in property. Majority of people who are business owners will actually invest in property because that saying of as safe as houses is true. People are always going to need somewhere to live, and it can be incredible when you go through it, make a lot of mistakes, but then crack it and get it right.
You seem so knowledgeable on property and the different options, but I'm just wondering, so for anyone that's listening to this that has kind of had a light bulb moment of, do you know what, actually, I love the sound of this. I love the sound of getting into property, but where do you even start with knowing, like, well, what is the right fit for you? Like, where would you even go?
Yeah, so this is a fantastic question. I believe the first thing you've actually got to do is look at yourself and say, what resources do I have at this moment in time? So whenever I do discovery calls with people, I always say, what are your resources? What are you starting with? They'll either say a couple of different things to me. They'll say, Athena, I have no knowledge and I have basically no money. How do I start? Now, the one thing I will say to you, and I will say this to you because there are lots of different people within the property space who, in my opinion, can sometimes say the wrong thing. And I want to be that person that acts in a sustainable way to actually give you the facts. You cannot get started in property with no money. It isn't a thing. If you come to me and you say, I've got absolutely no money, I'll say, okay, the money has to come from somewhere. It could be that you have all the knowledge and actually you have a fantastic partner or you have a fantastic family member that has the money but no knowledge, in which case join together. But the money has to come from somewhere. So let's say you came to me and you said, Athena, I want to learn about property. I've got about £10,000, so not enough to get a full-on buy to let or whatever it is, but £10,000. Um, but I'm still in a full-time job. I want to leave my full-time job. I'll say, great, you're probably going to look at more cash flowing strategies like me. So therefore, you're going to need to look at rent to rent, deal sourcing, property management, something along those lines where you're going to control it. Because then what you can do is you can take your £10,000, you can put it, say, £5,000 into the first one, build it up, get the cash flowing from that, roughly between 500, I'd say, on any property profit per month to 700, and then accumulate it and go again and again and just build that pot of cash up. If you were to come to me and say, Athena, I've got about £30,000, £50,000, where should I start? Then I'd say, okay, depending on what area that you're in, because of course the north is going to be cheaper than the south, you could potentially look to take on a property below market value or at auction, and you could actually do a buy, refurbish, rent, refinance it. So let's say you buy it for £50,000, you do a refurb on it. These are made up numbers, but you do a refurb on it for £10,000. You then get somebody in it to rent it out, say 700 pounds, and then you can actually then refinance it for say 100,000 or whatever it is. So if you bought it for 50, it's probably be about 70, 80, depending on how much you spend on it. And then when you go to remortgage it, of course, you've increased the value of the property. So then you can pull a little bit of money out and you're like, right, I've now got this asset that I now own that's cash flowing me, let's say profit of £500 per calendar month. But actually, I've got a bit of cash still available. Let's go again. Or I've learned how to do it the first time. I can now show somebody in my family how it works. They've got money that they want to invest. Actually, let's pull our monies together, or let's lend the money from them for a fixed return, something like that. And then you can go again. It's all about that experience. Or, quite frankly, what I did when I first started out, and what a lot of people do, is they start like at the bottom of the pyramid, which is a fantastic place to start because you get your foundations, right? And if you want your foundations, I would say if you've got a decent amount of money, go and learn how to buy a buy to let.
Yeah.
Go and learn how to manage a property. You know, if you've got, let's say, 30 to 50,000 pounds and you can get 25% deposit, just go and start with the basics because there's so much to learn in the basics. Where even if you just did a really light refurb to just bring it up a little bit, it's still going to increase the value, and just hold it and watch how property, as we all know, appreciates over time. So the answer to your question is, what are your resources available to you?
I love that. It just has so much potential, doesn't it? There's so many different paths you can take, and I think, like, I particularly like the networking events that I go to. There's always somebody I speak to that is in property, and they're all doing very different things. So whether they're investors or they have their own properties they rent out, or they're in the middle of a refurb or something, and it's just, I didn't even realize how many options there were, and the fact that you don't need to have hundreds of thousands to get started. I think it's really, really interesting, and there's going to be a lot more people. There's a lot of women that are getting into it, particularly entrepreneurs. Like, I know a lot of the spaces, and you've got an incredible community as well. Your community that you have, are they women and men that have gone all in on property, or are they juggling multiple things? Is it a real mix?
Yeah, so with my community, with the podcast, I do get girls and guys that listen to it, which is amazing. And I love it when the guys message me. But in the actual community itself, it is just for women. And the events that I have are to encourage women into property and empowering them, which I love. And what's so brilliant about the community that I have is I have lots of different people in there. I have people who are just starting out. I have people who have literally lots of different things. So I've got a land developer in there. I've got people who have huge portfolios going on in there, HMOs, service accommodation, buy-to-lets, whatever it may be. But one of the ethos that I have within my community is that when you come into my community, sit in my rooms, my tables, everyone is equal. That's what I have. So I don't care how many portfolios you have. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care where you've been. I care about who you show up for in that moment. And I have people who have like multi-million portfolios helping people who are just starting out. And for me, that's what it's all about. It's about surrounding yourself with people who are just like you and wanting the same things for you. And majority of the time, to be honest with you, people aren't even business owners. They're actually in full-time corporate jobs wanting to get into it, and they feel that property is the right place for them to go. And I also have some people, for example, who leave their jobs or in the process of leaving their jobs, actually wanting to get into business. Let's say they want to become like a personal VA, or they want to start their own coaching program or their own salons or whatever it may be, but they love the idea of building wealth through property. And that's the difference. Like for me, I believe that if someone's to ask me now that I know, I think property is wealth generation, but I think that from a cash flowing perspective, you should have some form of a multiple streams of income, some sort of a business, some sort of something that's going to be ticking over you, giving you that cash.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when I started, I did manage to get my monies from property through the rent strategy, and that is how I was able to leave my job. But now, if somebody was to ask me, I'd say that property is more for wealth within the current market with how mortgage rates are, etc.
Yeah. Amazing. So you've got an event coming up as well. Could you just tell us a bit about that so that anyone that's listening to this is maybe interested in getting in property or has just started and would love to come along? Like, tell us all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I would say is that property can be a really isolating and lonely game. So can being a business owner, right? Majority of people listening to this, we know what I mean when I say that. And not everybody gets it. They just don't really feel it and get it. And like I said in the beginning, I remember how I felt when I walked into that room of 45 people. And there was this girl, Claire, who I'll never forget. And I literally hung on to her like a koala, going, please don't leave me, Claire. Like, I don't know what to do. Don't leave me. And the reason I created this event, which is called the Girls and Property Annual Retreat, I've hosted it for the last 3 years. This is its fourth year, and it's going to be on the 25th of April, so Friday, 25th of April, 2025. It's going to be in Tring in Hertfordshire. And it's brilliant. What I find is I wanted to create a different type of day. So usually property events, what happens is they'll take you to a Hilton, a Marriott, a Holiday Inn, something like that. It's very, very blue or white or just no heart, no love, really. And it's just people speaking on the stage, and you might get a chance to network, but actually you just feel a bit uncomfortable or that people are looking down to you. That's the opposite of the Girls and Property annual retreat. Number one, it's in a manor house with peacocks around. So the setting, first of all, is absolutely beautiful, luxurious. My background is events management. So before I did my travel, I was a travel consultant. My degree is in marketing communications and events management. That's what I've got, literally a degree in that I studied for 4 years. So Jackie, funny enough, if I wasn't going to do what I do now, I guarantee you I'd have been a wedding planner. Like I guarantee it. And I remember somebody said to me at the last event, they made a joke and they were dead serious when they made this joke. They said, Athena, is this like your wedding day, this day? Because the detail I go into it, I've got a guest book, I've got cakes, I've got goodie bags, I'm very over the top.
I
I like
mean,
to
your last one, from looking at the photos, you had like flamethrowers and
Yeah. Yeah, I had fire breathers at the last one. I had fire breathers. I've got a 360-degree photo booth. I had casino tables. To be fair, that was a night, that was a gala. So at the retreat, there's not going to be fire breathers. I'll just tell you that now. There's not going to be casino tables. But what there will be, well, there will be three incredible speakers who are going to be speaking. One of them is about land development. If you want to learn about land, she is phenomenal. Another one is about the rent strategy that I just mentioned, but specifically to do with social housing and giving back to people on this in this world, because that's important. And the other one is all about personal branding and social media as well. And then we're going to have a mortgage update because it's important to understand from a finance perspective what your options are from the brilliant sponsor of Girls and Property, Kim McGinley. And then I've got 8 expert tables. So for me, what has been missing, nobody ever said this, the feedback has always been amazing, but for me, when you reflect on your own events and you go, what was missing? There must be something that you can do to improve each time. For me, what was missing was, it's fine for people to ask questions when people put their hands up and they answer the questions, but for all the introverts in the room and people who don't feel confident to do that, I'm like, what about them? So I decided to create these 8 expert tables where we could have meaningful conversations. So if they did have a question for one of the speakers, they're on a table of like 10 to 8, and they feel that they can actually have those conversations with them. Because for me, what differentiates my community, my events, if someone was to ask me, is my events are to build meaningful connections.
yeah.
It's about understanding who you are as a person, not just giving a business card to somebody and never doing anything with it and binning it. That is not what I'm about. It's about, who are you? What do you stand for? What do you believe in? What is it you're looking for? And how do you then want to take that forward? That's what I represent. And so I've got my 8 expert tables. I've got that. I've got my goodie bags. I have to say, I host, because I'm Greek, I host the best food. Like, people always give me 10 out of 10 for my food. They're like, Athena, this food is exceptional. Like, none of this sandwich rubbish. And during the breaks, it's protein balls, it's smoothies, it's really about understanding as women, what is it that we need for energy in this moment. And
Yeah.
you'll see it for yourself. Like the women in the room are kind, decent, empowering, formidable, unstoppable women. And it's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to host them.
So for anyone that's listening to this after the event has already happened, you do these every year, don't you?
I do these every year. It's an interesting one. So at the moment, I host these big events for 80 women, which quite frankly is a lot of work. At the end of the day, I am still first and foremost a one-woman band. I
Yeah.
am. I've just hired myself a freelance executive assistant, which was one of the best decisions I've ever made. Invest in yourself and invest in your team. But at the end of the day, the decisions are always by me. I'm always the one that does all the business development. It is just me, basically. And so with that, it's a lot of work. And what I have to make sure that I do is I have to do it where I have to make them that they are long lasting and that people want to come. They've sold out for the last 3 years. This one's going to sell out again. It's like, what is it that I actually want going forwards? And so a lot of people have been asking me for more intimate, kind of smaller retreats, say for 3 days abroad or here, where maybe there'll be 10 to 12 people, and they can have those really up close interactions. So
Yeah.
I'm 99% sure that for 2026, I'll be doing that, but also the annual retreat will be happening again for the 80 women.
Amazing. And next things for you, we're obviously working together on upgrading your entire brand. You're just taking that next level in your business so that you can become the legacy of the women in property. But what is next for you? Like, what is your next big sort of goal that you're going for?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And sometimes you're almost blinkered because you've just got such a busy life that you're like,
Yeah,
what even is my next goal? So I've been thinking about what gives me energy, what gives me purpose, what gives me life. And I love meeting people and I love speaking on stage. For me, speaking on stage is where my heart is. I love it. I get energy from it. So I'd love to do more speaking opportunities. I'd love to get into schools to educate young women as well.
love.
So to get into schools would be an absolute pleasure for me and just to help young women believe in themselves. So definitely that. I love putting on events. I'm doing more in-person workshops for the community this year. So I've got an absolute love for that, where I'm going to be getting women in the room together and connecting women. I've been doing a bit regarding my human design at the moment. And one of the
Love.
things is I'm a connector of people and a manifester. I think I'm a manifester. So it's about. Oh no, I'm not a manifester. No, I'm not a manifester. I'm a generator. That's it. She said to me, I'm a generator. So she says that I have my own sort of battery. And she's like, you give people, your battery, you're a connector of people.
Yeah,
So that's where my heart is, and doing more for girls in property, encouraging it. I'd like to get girls in property up to 100. If you ask me for my 5 year goal, the end sort of 5 years, I want to franchise girls in property across the UK. That's
amazing.
actually what I really want. So I want to have girls in property in Bath, Leeds, Manchester, so that all women can have that under the Girls and Property umbrella and all unite and come together. That's the dream, I would say, that I will nod and
Lovely.
go, I'm proud of that.
Amazing. And just to wrap up as well, what would you give as your one top tip for somebody that is just thinking about getting started?
Oh my goodness, I have so many. One top tip. So it all has to start with believing, first of all, that you know that you want to do it. It has to stem from that. So if you have that burning desire and that burning feeling in you that something needs to change or that something is going to level up for you, don't push that back down. Let it come out and follow it and go for it. Listen to lots of podcasts, get lots of free resources. There's so much readily available. We've got beautiful Jackie's podcast, my podcast, books, audiobooks, whatever it is that you feel you would love to do, and then get yourself accountability and surrounding yourself with like-minded people. So to give you an example, because this is important, I say this. When I first started in property all that time ago, I was reading a magazine called Your Property Network, YPM, and I opened a page, and on that page was a two-page spread with a woman called Sophie Foote on it. She was massive in this, as in on the actual page, she was, you know, um, all lit up on the page. And I turned to my mum at the time on the tube and I said to mum, don't ask me why, but she's going to become my best friend one day. I don't know why. She just will. I'm just telling you she will. My mum just sort of nodded and went, okay. So I found Sophie on social media and I reached out to her and I said, Sophie, I love your magazine. Thank you so much for your article. It was amazing. It's inspiring what you're doing. She was in the rent space. So that's how I learned about it. And I said, it'd be great to meet for coffee one day. And she responded to me about 3 days later and she says, hey, it would be great to meet for coffee. When are you available? We tried to marry our dates together because I was in a full-time job and she's a full-time mum. It didn't quite work. We never married the dates together and we stopped speaking because it didn't work. And I thought, okay, fair enough. 2 months later, we both get invited to a dinner for women in the South Coast because we were in Bournemouth and Southampton at the time. We get invited to this dinner on the South Coast. Had no idea the other person was going. We sat down at the table at this Spanish restaurant, and I turned, and she turned, and I went, and we started chatting, and I went, "Are you Sophie?" And she went, "Are you Athena?" And we were like, "What the chances are that?" And the universe brought us together, and we sat down talking to each other. And from that, we've been best friends ever since. And we actually went into business together as well on one of our first ever projects. So it's a funny old thing. So what I'm saying is my advice is get out there, say it to the universe, say it to yourself, I'm going to go meet these people because someone said to me the other day, one of the questions I got asked is, why do you think you are where you are today? Like, what do you think was the defining factor? And I think it's you have to have the unwavering, and I mean unwavering belief in yourself, but then you have to be around people who help you to believe in yourself the days that you
Yeah,
don't believe in yourself. people is what got me to the dance. Accountability, networking, them believing in me is why I'm here today. So I thank them every day for that.
I love that so much. So beautiful. Where can our listeners find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram. I live on Instagram under Athena Dobson underscore official. I'm also Girls in Property on Instagram as well. Come and find me, come and connect. If you want to join the community, just DM me the word community. We'll have a chat. Again, I don't know when this comes out, but if it comes out before the 25th of April and you would like any tickets to the retreat, also let me know. But I'm always open for a conversation, any help, any advice you need.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on today, Athena. If you have found this podcast episode really helpful, if it's given you those light bulb moments, or if you want to reach out to Athena, make sure you drop her a message and do go check out the Girls in Property podcast as well. Thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you in the next episode. Thanks, Athena.
Thank you.